Welcome back to another Extreme Movie Night. This week I really wanted to do a creepy video game I found, but first of all I couldn't finish it in time for this upload, and it already has a lot of people that talked about it. So it is creepy and I still want to do a video on it, so I will do it on the 1st of October instead. So I decided I wanted to do another movie in the meantime. This time we have probably the oldest movie we've ever covered, it being made in Austria in 1983. That was 16 years before I was born. This is an Austrian movie by Gerald Gargle. The movie name? Angst, or Fear in English, or rebranded to Schizophrenia in France, which seems questionable because the guy it's based on didn't have schizophrenia. This movie is quite unique, even for nowadays. It was banned in a lot of countries for how visceral the violence is, as well as it's based on a very real serial killer known as Werner Neisseck. The movie itself is unique in the way that most horror movies, the protagonist is usually the victim of a serial killer or something. Think Halloween or A Nightmare on Elm Street. This movie is very much from the perspective of the killer, who doesn't have a name in the movie, only being credited as Psycho. This movie has a very little dialogue, and most of it is the Psycho describing his actions and his mindset in painstaking detail through monologues. He describes the way he kills, and to him, it's very logical. This makes the movie very unsettling, the way that the Psycho rationalizes the extreme violence taking place, as he describes it so matter-of-fact, like it all just makes sense, and we're the ones being weird for not understanding. He's describing his murders how you would describe making toast. It's that simple to him. It's very weird. So, if you don't know how we do things on this channel, let me break it down for you. We start out with an intro, which you are listening to now, then we get into the summary, which takes up the bulk of the video, and then we get into the analysis, where we describe the main themes and message of the work we are talking about. Which this movie, it might be a bit short, as it is sort of just the spectacle of the movie itself. But we do have a little bit still. So if you like these types of videos, like the video as it helps me out a lot. And without getting too much longer into the intro, let's get into Gerald Gargle's Angst. The movie starts with a normal opening credit roll, but there is a noticeable water dripping sound played over it. The text is superimposed over a large building that says, "This film is based on true events," which, like we said earlier, is true. The camera pans down to what looks like a prison. Inside a prison cell, a man eats some soup. The voiceover, which like we said is the main character, starts his first monologue as he eats the soup. "The fear in her eyes and the knife in her chest. That is the last memory of my mother. That is why I had to go to prison for 4 years, even though she survived it. After I got out, it was good for a while, until I met that 70-year-old. Oh God," were her last words. And she was just dead. I didn't know her, and I didn't steal anything. The damned idea was just suddenly there. I just had to. I couldn't explain it. So then I went to prison for 10 years. After this monologue, he shaves his face in his cell and we get a good look at him. He looks like a young Matthew Lillard, which is strange. He continues his monologue and says that psychologists were interested in his thoughts, so they asked him about his dreams a lot. He told them about the flowers. It was always just flowers. However, he could fantasize about whatever he wanted. It helped him keep control, the urge to let it all out. After this monologue is over, a bunch of guards walk with some keys to his cell with a very noticeable and nice sounding footsteps. They let him out of his cage, and he explains through the monologue once again that prison exists to better oneself. But he can never get rid of the urge to torture a human. He will do this again. The guard walks him all the way out of the prison with very shaky camera work, which is intentional, by the way. During his walk, he continues the monologue and says that he's been in prison for over half his life. However, he's never committed these crimes out of joy. It's always been something else. Outside, the clock strikes noon and the bell tolls loudly just as the Psycho leaves his prison a free man. He explains, matter-of-factly, that this will happen again. It has to. This time, though, they will not catch him. He has no family, no friends, nothing. No one came to pick him up. He walks down the street methodically, as if he already has a concrete plan. He just has to find someone. He didn't know where he was, though. He'd been in this town for 10 years, but he knows nothing about it. So he wonders, where can a person meet people? He comes to the conclusion that a coffee shop is the best option. So he finds the nearest one and goes in. Inside, there's a man reading a newspaper, 2 young women, and a waitress. The psycho sees the 2 young women and seems to be a little nervous. He gets up out of his booth and sits near them instead, as he takes special note of them. He says they're a little young, but that would work. He orders some sausage and dips some sauce in it and eats it. The girls stare at him while he eats his sausage. He eats it, and the camera takes special attention to this act of eating the sausage. The psycho explains in his monologue that these girls provoked him, and his fantasies ran wild. The camera takes close-ups of the girls' lips, their eyes, and the psycho eating the sausage. The psycho says he wonders how he will approach them. He wonders great things. He says, though, he can't do it here. In this coffee shop, everybody would notice. So he leaves. He hails a taxi while he says in his head that he needs a quiet place so that everything could go well. He gets in and the cabbie asks where to. He says, just straight ahead. He explains that in this taxi, it would be great. Quiet. No one would hear him. As they are driving, the psycho thinks that this girl reminds him of his first girlfriend. A real whore, he says. He was 14 and she was a lot older. Old enough to be his mother even. She made him remove her shoes and then made him kiss her. She took him home and made him tie her up and hit her with the whip. He really enjoyed it. He says he became her slave that day and it really excited him. The whole time he is monologuing to himself, he is untying his shoelaces and wrapping them around his hands so he can strangle the woman with them. Though, because he is monologuing, he doesn't realize the taxi driver keeps asking scaredly, "What are you doing back there?" Eventually, after asking enough times, she slams the car and screams the question again, "What are you doing?" He runs out of the car away from this lady, who is now privy to his scheme. He just runs into the woods with some really good music. Which, by the way, the music and sound design of this movie are top-notch. He puts his shoelaces back after he runs for a while, and he seems to get away from the taxi driver. He says no one followed him. He has no idea how far he ran and how long that was, but he doesn't recognize this area anymore. However, now he's isolated. He takes a notice of a big house in the woods near him, and he walks onto the property and sort of looks around. He walks up the driveway to this house, and it is quite big. He says, though, it seems desolate. He wasn't sure if someone was living in this house or not. He sort of skulks around and tries to see if the doors are unlocked. He looks in the windows and tries to see if they are open, all while being careful just in case someone was around. But he said it seems like this is a paradise for him. Not a soul around. He says that this house looked well protected by trees and brush. He didn't have to be afraid of neighbors here. This location was perfect. No danger of being spotted, he says. He notably circles the house several times over and over until he finds a window, and he puts his sleeve over his arm. He hits it once and then twice when it breaks. A piece of glass hits his head, which I found pretty funny when he does this, and he jumps through the broken window. The inside of the house is quite nice as well, and the psycho looks around stealthily just in case somebody is home. He says he could hardly breathe because he was so incredibly excited. The idea that somebody might meet him here makes him go mad. He couldn't take it much longer. He finds a kitchen and then inside finds a kitchen knife. He equips it and continues looking around. It now devoid of music, and it's very suspenseful. He wipes his fingerprints off the knife, and he says now he's sure someone lives here. As he says this, a wheeling noise comes out and it startles him. "My victim," he says. A larger bald man in a suit in a wheelchair with spit running down his face. The man stares right at the psycho and noticeably doesn't seem to care. The psycho is slightly caught off guard by this too when the man asks, "Daddy?" to him. The psycho then gets it, and then he backs off from this man. He's sure this man won't say anything. He explains that he was in a state of mind that he wasn't thinking clearly. He lets the man roll away and he goes up the stairs. He says he's scared of himself now. When he was young, he had great fear in his heart. He could never be alone in a room. His grandmother once locked him in a dark room for the whole night, and he was convinced that she was trying to kill him. He thought he would die of fear that day. As he monologues, he looks around the upper floor. Just then, he hears a car pull up. He looks out the window and sees it. A car pulling up the driveway. A young woman and an old woman get out. The psycho continues. What luck I have. This house is perfect for me. My plan will work. The old lady takes the dachshund out of the car and into the house, and then the young lady parks the car in the garage. The old lady takes some pills in the kitchen and walks to the guy in the wheelchair. The dachshund goes upstairs, though, and then just stares at the psycho up there. If this were my dog, she'd be barking before she even knew he was there. The dachshund, however, seems completely calm and just kind of whines at the psycho. Downstairs, the old lady wheels the man in the chair as the young woman comes through the main door after parking the car in the garage. The young woman puts down groceries and the keys on the counter. The man in the wheelchair says, Mommy? Daddy's here. To which she only replies, Don't be dumb, he's been dead for years. The young woman goes upstairs to the bathroom and runs a bath for the man. The psycho, close by, just watching and waiting. He continues his monologue and says, As a child, he always feared for his life. His mother threw out his father, and then she lived with his stepfather. Then, his mother tried to kill him. She wrapped him in wet diapers and put him by a window in the winter so he'd freeze to death. As he explains this, the old woman notices the broken window and calls the young woman down. Her name's Sylvia. Sylvia runs downstairs, and as she does, the psycho takes this opportunity and runs into her with a knife, but somehow it doesn't stab her and just falls to the ground, so he just rushes her and pushes her on the floor. He rushes to all the doors and locks them. He drops the man in the wheelchair and takes some duct tape from the floor. As this whole showdown is happening, the monologue continues. He says that his mother never loved him. However, she had a real infatuation with his sister. He takes the duct tape and wraps one half of the doorknob and the other half around Sylvia's legs, tying her in a weird position so she cannot get away. As he does this, he continues, saying, To my mother, I never really existed. One time, though, when me and my sister were alone, I really hurt her. I wanted to hit her until she was dead. I could see it in her eyes that she was scared of me. He then runs over to the old lady and begins to strangle her, or at least subdue her. He keeps the monologue going, saying, Because my mother didn't want me, I lived with my grandmother. She said I was the shame of the family, an illegitimate child. He chokes her and she screams as she tries to struggle, and he continues. My mother was incredibly religious, and to purge her guilt, she sent me to a convent to become a priest. I didn't want to, but I had to. The woman screams over and over as he puts his hand in her mouth to silence her and rips the dentures out of her mouth, and she slightly gets away, and he runs and tackles her to the ground. He continues to choke her and continues his monologue as he puts a sock in her mouth. At the convent, there was a barn with tons of animals. I went there with a knife and began to stick an animal over and over. The pig was scared of me, and it squealed so loudly that the nuns came over and quickly caught me. He then drags the old lady into the bedroom onto the bed. The old woman limp on the bed as he ties her legs together. In the other room, Sylvia struggles to get out of her constraints on the door. The psycho, out of breath, walks away from the scene and slides down a wall. He sweats heavily, his eyes dilated. He shivers, possibly in ecstasy or possibly something else. The dachshund comes up and sniffs his crotch and finds the dentures and then runs away. Run away, you magnificent little bastard. Outside the room, the guy who was in the wheelchair crawls away. He then says in his monologue, to his family, after the incident with the pig, he was now a monster to them. They were afraid of him. His stepfather hated him, but liked his sister. Then it shows Sylvia still tied up, looking at the knife on the ground. He then walks over to the sink and gets a huge drink from the tap. He continues the monologue and says, once, his stepfather hit him so hard that he had to crawl away. As he says this, it shows the guy in the wheelchair also crawl away, a parallel. He says his mother and his sister just laughed at him after that. It's almost like he's recreating the people in his life whom he hated with this break-in and serial killing, each one representing somebody in his childhood. Just then the phone rings and it snaps him out of drinking the water, which he quickly finds Sylvia, who is trying to take the knife in her mouth and rip her constraints off. And so he ties her mouth up with duct tape so she can't try and grab it. Meanwhile, the guy in the wheelchair continues to crawl up the stairs. The phone continues to ring and he hears it upstairs, the guy in the wheelchair crawling past it, as he says, "Daddy?" again, causing the psycho to know exactly where the phone and the man are. He runs up the stairs and finds the phone, which is alone in the room, by the way. It stops ringing and he turns his attention to the man who is crawling into the bathroom, the bath still running, and the psycho straddles the large man from behind on the ground. As he does, his monologue says, "I wanted to take revenge on my stepfather. I wanted to kill him out of rage, but I was too weak, so I had to run away. I slept in the park where I saw a swan. I strangled it and cut off its head. It was expelled from the flock and couldn't go home. It lived alone and liked humans, away from its family, but it was scared of me. I imagined I was taking revenge on my stepfather as I killed it." As he says this, he attempts to choke the big guy, but he seems too big to do anything to at first. So instead of choking him, he grabs the guy and puts him under the bathwater to drown him, violently. He keeps him under as he struggles, lifting his legs in the air as he struggles underwater. He finishes and goes back downstairs, where the old lady and Sylvia seem to have given up struggling. He first goes up to the old lady, to which he says, "Everything's gone wrong. It happened too fast." He imagined this different, more dramatic. He walks over to the old lady and cuts the sock out of her mouth. He continues and says, "The mother was supposed to see the dead body of her son upstairs in the bath, see him carefully that he could no longer move, to teach her respect. But she herself isn't moving anymore. This wasn't supposed to happen. I thought she was pretending at first, but she seems like something was really wrong with her." He drags the old woman to the wheelchair and says she has to experience every stage very carefully. He leans on her and goes over to Sylvia, lamenting that he's lost control of the situation. He unties Sylvia's mouth and she asks, "What's he doing?" "Her mother's ill and needs medicine from the kitchen." The psycho believes the woman and gets up and goes and cuts Sylvia down, thinking maybe she can help with his fantasy, get back on track. He thinks the old one has to stay conscious for his plan to work. He wanted to strangle her after all, after which Sylvia would watch and see what it meant to die. Then he would kill the daughter. It has to go as planned. He drags Sylvia to the kitchen onto the floor for some reason. Strangely though, Sylvia begins to kiss the psycho? He says she either liked him that much or she was trying some weird plan to save herself. Which, by the way, I have zero clue why Sylvia is, like, making out with his neck right now. He says it doesn't matter though. She just doesn't know that yet. He had something very special planned for her. Very special. In the kitchen, he says he saw a ton of tools when he walked in. He has to be very precise with her. He finds the medicine and he says he has to wake up the mother first though. He goes over to the passed out old lady and begins giving her pill after pill, hoping, praying she would regain consciousness. After all, he thinks, she is supposed to whisper and beg him to live. Then the daughter would watch how her mother dies. As he does this though, the daughter escapes to a closet and hides in it. But he realizes the old woman's already dead. He screams in frustration and pushes the wheelchair and the body ends up in a really weird position against the wall. He then laments that he only has the daughter left for him now. He picks up the knife and then realizes he can't find Sylvia. He calls out for her to come out, but he cannot find her in the closet. He keeps calling, but she stays silent. He begins to panic, but realizes the doors and the windows are still locked, and the wiener dog is still chewing on the dentures at that. He starts looking upstairs, and once Sylvia hears him make his way up the stairs, she silently leaves the kitchen closet and tries to open the front door, but realizes it's locked. He hears her and rushes her back downstairs where she screams and jumps through the window instead, trying one last effort to escape the psycho. The psycho goes through the window as well and chases her down into the cellar, where he chases her with a knife where she screams. He catches her and stabs her in the back like Mickey from Devilman Crybaby, and the dachshund chases close behind and it tries to bite the psycho for his owner's sake, but the psycho just keeps stabbing Sylvia over and over. Blood squirts out, and it isn't like you'd think from a movie where she'd just die after one stab. It's very messy and slow. He stabs her over and over as bile and blood squirt out from her neck, and she slowly passes away. Which, after he realizes she's dead, he kisses her neck, this sexually exciting him. they both now covered in intense blood while he kisses her now dead corpse. I know this is obviously a movie, but I imagine the blood is actually like ketchup when they were filming this, and he had to get a huge mouthful of straight ketchup while filming this scene, which makes even more sense because right after this he vomits on camera, the dog barking in the background. It's very real looking for a 1980s film. It's not cheesy looking like you might expect like in Hellraiser or something. The camera then gets a shot behind him, and his pants and underwear are down. Although it's not shown or stated, it's very likely he raped the corpse after he kills her. But I could be wrong on that. It's not said. The dog then runs away with them both lying in the pool of blood and vomit. The same dripping noise from the intro, the only audio left remaining. The next morning, the dachshund stares at his dead owner and the psycho. What a good boy. He sniffs over by the corpse when the church bell rings and he barks at it. It then shows the whole visceral aftermath. The psycho on top of Sylvia, his pants down where her corpse looks very pale. Like I said, this looks very realistic for the time period this film was made. Intensely so. The psycho wakes up again and vomits. Of course. He retches and pulls up his blood-covered pants as he crawls away. He walks into the sunlight out of the cellar and knows he has to get right back to work now. He walks back to the driveway through the brush and looks in the garage. The white car that came in still there. He gets in and looks around inside the car as he shivers. He then gets out of the car and walks back to the house in the chill morning, his breath showing in the air. He goes back in the front door, breaking a third window in this movie, and looks for the keys on the counter. He finds them near the groceries, and his monologue finally continues. He says, I don't want to leave the corpses in the house like that, so I made a plan. I go back to the first victim. He then goes back to the first victim, still face down in the tub, dead. He pulls him out and drags his body down the stairs. He rips open the front door and drags him through the broken glass down to the cellar right next to his sister. He then goes back up the stairs, and the monologue continues with him saying, I decided to take the family with me. The thought of the corpses being with me the whole time excited me greatly. To which, as he tries to pick up the mother, he shudders very sexually, I guess? It looks really weird. He says, I will not leave the corpses after I had this thought, though. I have ideas for them. He goes back down and picks up the mother and drags her down the stairs as well. As he does so, he says he was determined that this was just the beginning. He wants to live out his fantasies. This was all in his head. He was going to follow his fantasies to the end, though. He would find more victims after this whole ordeal and show the corpses of this family to the new victims as well. He was convinced that he could really scare them that way. The dog follows him as he drags the bodies and says he has the fantasy in his head of these bodies of these victims next to his next murder victims later. Sat right next to the next victims. That would scare them. Some of them might even die in fear. No one could stand that, he thinks. Then he would finish them off. Now, all of his victims together in the cellar, he leaves and gets the car and backs it up to the entrance of the cellar in the yard, and he opens the trunk. And then he picks up each body one by one and puts all of them in the trunk. That's one spacious trunk. Him putting all of them in there is notably on one continuous shot, making it uncomfortably long to show how awkward it is. After he gets them all in there, he heads back to the house and takes off his coat and shirt. He cleans his face and body methodically while the dog eats groceries, mind you. And then he goes over to the bedroom and dries himself off with a piece of cloth and takes off his blood-covered pants. He looks around and takes any clothes he can find and puts together a strange ensemble of black slacks, his old bloody shirt, and a white tailcoat, which makes him look very suspicious. His monologue continues. He says he feels lighter, like he's floating, but he knows this relief won't last long. The urge will return. He leaves the house, with the dog following close behind, by the way, and heads back down to the car near the entrance of the cellar. He gets in the car with the dog and drives off with his new family in the trunk. He drives through a gate and down the street, where he accidentally hits a green car with a bunch of people nearby. They all swarm and surround his car, and he panics. 2 people and a bunch of children circle his car, yelling at him to get out of the car to talk. He cannot be caught now, though, he thinks. Not again. So he tries to start the car and freaks out as it stalls. He runs over a sign as he quickly flees the scene. As he drives into town, he notices blood on his hands. He rubs it, but it does not come off. He looks around the car and finds a black pair of gloves that somehow fit perfectly and puts them on. After which he finds the personal belongings of the family, and then he looks at them all with classical music playing in the background. Baby pictures, modeling photos, memories of this family. These were real people, and for one fleeting second he says he feels something. But then he quickly corrects himself and says he can't pity these victims. He can't. So he shoves the thoughts out. He says, I had a perfect plan after the entire thing. And as he says this, he pulls right back up to the coffee shop from the day before. He gets out and leaves the dog in the car and walks into the coffee shop, looking disheveled and horrible. Everyone from yesterday is here, and he sits down. This time, they are all looking at him. He says in his mind, the 2 girls were there, and I was on it immediately. As the waitress brings him a croissant and a sausage. He says his fantasies went wild again. It was irresistible. Fantastic. He thought of how he could approach them. Then he decided. He would kill them all. Right here, right now, all 4. Before he starts though, he walks outside with the plate of food and gives the rest to the dog just so it stops barking and drawing attention. The 4 inside the store follow him as he does. Just then though, a miracle. Police pull up. The psycho looks at them and panics. They walk up to him and circle the car several times, and they ask for his registration, and the psycho just says, I had nothing to do with it. He makes another excuse, but the cops say they just don't care. Show them his registration. He says it's not his car, he's just holding it for a friend. His final monologue says, I was so excited. The moment was so thrilling. Now they'll all be scared to death. As he finishes that sentence in his monologue, they all open the trunk, which is what the police were asking for, and everyone just stares. They don't actually show the bodies, and no one says a word. He then finishes his monologue with the words, now everybody's afraid of me. I'm famous. They all look in the trunk as the camera pulls up and the credits roll. As the credits roll, a psychiatrist says that this man was sentenced to life in jail after this. Before we get to the analysis, I want to talk about the actual event where this happened, as the movie is actually based on a real triple murder, like I said in the intro. It is based on Werner Neisseck, which unfortunately the only sources I can find on this are on Wikipedia, and the others being ISBN numbers that I currently do not have access to. So I will unfortunately have to go off the Wikipedia page, but it will have to be good enough. Neisseck was born in 1946 in Austria, and is considered one of the most dangerous men in Austrian criminal history. Like the psycho monologues in the movie, he was an illegitimate child, and his mother hated him. After which he stabbed his mother, though did not kill her. After he got out of prison for that, he killed a 73-year-old woman, to which he pleaded insanity to. And then he somehow got out after only 8 years. And that's when the murders that this movie is based on took place. It mostly goes how it does in the movie. Right after getting out of prison, he got to a cab to go to Kupferbrunberg. He then, for no reason at all, broke into a large villa, which was owned by the Altrider family. Inside the house, he found wheelchair-bound Walter Altrier. He waited for his mother to come home, Gertrude, and his sister Ingrid to come back. After they did, Neisseck bound and gagged them both. And then he strangled Walter and hung Gertrude from a noose. And then he took Ingrid and abused her for 11 hours straight, and then strangled her. He then found and killed the family cat. During this whole thing, a phone call from Ingrid's fiance came in and he let it ring, which explains that phone call in the movie that seemingly went nowhere. He then fell asleep near the bodies in the cellar. The next day, he took all of the bodies in the car and drove into town. He went to a restaurant and ate the whole time with black gloves, which the other patrons found very suspicious. An employee took the license plate number and the police went to the house where the car belonged to, where they found a broken window and 3 missing occupants. The cops later found Neisseck, where he confessed to the murder, simply because he wanted to kill someone. It was a complete coincidence that these 3 were the victims. It was just wrong place, wrong time. He was then sentenced to life in prison, to which he then tried to escape prison in 1983, the year that this movie came out in, ironically. So that whole story explains some of the loose ends in the movie, and it's kind of crazy they made this movie only 3 years after these horrible murders were committed. Okay, after that, let's get into the analysis. Like I said in the intro, there isn't a whole lot to say in this analysis, as it is really just a dramatized retelling of the real murders. But if I were to try to find anything, I would say that unlike last week's book we reviewed, A Clockwork Orange, which one of the messages was just some people do evil things because they like to do evil things, just as some people's nature is to do good things. This case, I think, is a little bit more than that. It really seems that this guy had a very, very bad childhood, with his mother hating him and trying to kill him and stuff. So perhaps the message here is that monsters are not born, but are made. The way he speaks so matter-of-fact about these murders in this film, it's chilling. It truly is. He describes it as if he was describing something so normal or benign. His mind was broken. It's truly scary. But let me know what you think. Did I get it right? Was this the message, or did the movie not really have a message like I said earlier? Was it just to describe the events in a dramatized way? Comment what you think. But that is about it for me today. Next week, we're going to do an Extreme Book Club on Playground, the Child of Divorce, which is the sequel to Playground, one of my more popular Extreme Book Club videos. But until then, I love you all. Words cannot describe how much you all mean to me. Doing this job is a complete dream come true, and each and every one of you that watches this video, wherever you are, is a hero to me, allowing me to do this. You are all heroes. I love you all so much, and I will see you next time. Bye.